You should be live.
All right, good morning and welcome to the August 4th Mountain Community Capital Fund Operating Committee meeting. My name is Tim Love. I'm the chair of the Mountain Community Capital Fund, also known as the MCCF. So today our meeting materials have been posted online and our agenda for today. I'd like to make a change to our agenda. We've got a quorum at the moment, and I think we still will, but I think important to have as many voting members as possible present for consideration of any new loans. So I'd like to reorient the agenda to move the new business item of new loans to the top of our agenda. And to do that, I think it's the safest would be to do a quick motion and vote on that. So do I have a motion to move that item to the top? I see D. Williams. Second from Frank.
Mr. Chair, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this point, we'll do a vote. Well, before we do that, I'm going to do a quick roll call. I skipped a step here. So let's do a roll call and then we'll jump into that. So I'm going to go down the line and call out your name, at which point I'll ask you to either raise your hand or say aye or present. We're just going to go in order based on what's on my screen. D. Williams, we're starting with you.
Present. I'm a voting member as well.
Very well.
Thank you.
Yep, and to each member, please state who you were appointed by, as well as whether or not you're a voting member. Thank you. Frank McGowan.
Frank McGowan, City of Asheville staff, and I am a voting member.
John Appleby.
I'm a voting member. I forget who appointed me, but I'm present.
That would be the City of Asheville.
Thank you.
Karen Omansky.
I'm Karen Omansky, and I am a non-voting member. I'm with Self-Help.
Kelly Foster.
Good morning, Kelly Foster, Mountain BizWorks non-voting member.
Lydia Turgeon.
Good morning, Lydia Turgeon, Carolina Small Business Development Fund, non-voting member.
Nikki Reed.
Good morning, City of Asheville staff, and I'm a voting member.
Rachel Sawyer Nygaard.
Good morning, everyone. Rachel Sawyer Nygaard here, Buncombe County Government Employee Voting Member.
Tara Brown.
Good morning, Tara Brown. I'm with Self-Help Credit Union, and I am not a voting member.
Thana Alley.
Dana Alley, City of Asheville staff, non-voting.
Yasleen Gonzalez.
Good morning, Yoselin Gonzalez, Mountain BizWorks, non-voting member.
All right, my name is Tim Love, Buncombe County, Chair of the Mountain Community Capital Fund, voting member. Is there anyone on the call who has not introduced themselves?
Carl Alguire, City of Asheville appointee, voting member.
My apologies, Carl. Also the vice chair. Get your full title in there. Is there anyone else that I've missed? All right. So back to the agenda. We've got a motion and a second to move the new loan presentation to the top of the agenda so that we can make sure all members have an opportunity to review that. At this time, we'll do our vote. And so I'd ask all those in favor to raise your hand, both virtually, if you're in favor. All right, thank you. Please lower your hands. And then is there anyone opposed? All right, seeing none, the motion passes, and we will move directly to you, Yasleen, for a presentation on new loans. So we'll turn it over to you.
Great, let me get my ducks in a row here.
Yep, and thanks for your flexibility. I know we called an audible.
No worries. Okay. Make this a little bit bigger. Can everybody see that? Pretty okay?
That works for me.
Great. All right. So this request is for a recreation retail type of business. It is 100% woman owned. It is a BIPOC owned business as well, located in the city of Asheville. The business is a startup, so it's organized on 5/11/2023. I'll get to some of the financials here below. The loan amount requested is $65,688. The funding will be used essentially to start up, which includes inventory, equipment, and working capital. We will have a UCC on all business assets. The value of the assets is projected at $55,400. However, we're assuming a 75% discount at a liquidation, so that comes up to a liquidation value of $13,850 if assumed. Essentially, the loan is unsecured here. We have very minimal collateral. The rate is 5% fixed, and we have 3 months of interest only, so 81 months total. So the loan term is 84 months, and the monthly payment coming out to be $957. We have excellent credit score, excellent repayment history. There've never been any collections or bankruptcies reported. Client has invested a little over $20,000. We typically don't see this type of injection into a project, but she positioned herself in a financial state to be able to inject $20,000 into this project. And so roughly about 30% of the total project cost. With this specific job, the business, one full-time job will be created. Essentially, in the next couple years, once the business is up and running, she will be bringing on additional employees. The lender that worked with this specific client provided 5 hours of TA, specifically around financial projections and market research. And she will continue to work with a coach post-closing, and will be establishing bookkeeping protocols as well. We'll be seeking an 85% guarantee on this request on this loan, which is about $55,834. And a couple comments here. So the client has invested her own funds, time, and energy into this project. She has extensive experience in the industry, has really been connecting with other businesses, complementary businesses in order to support hers. And yeah, I think that's as much as I can say with this one there. So back to some of the numbers here. So these are projected numbers. We don't have, because it is a startup, there's no historical data. So for 2023, the remaining of 2023, we're projecting a revenue of $86,245. You can see her cost of goods sold there. Because she is mostly retail, you're gonna have some COGS there. You can see at the bottom, the debt service is clearly not enough to cover. This is a true cash flow model. So clearly you can see that the debt service is not there. The business would not be able to repay the loan on its own, essentially, just with the sales with this year, which is, something that we do see. That negative debt service will be covered by some of the working capital that we will be funding. So also you can see there is owner compensation of $23,000. she has a lot of flexibility around that. But we went ahead and added in there because those essentially that was what she's currently making at her full-time job. But she, as she said, she's very flexible as far as expenses go and taking out her own honor draw. And then in 2024, of course, it looks much better. This is a 6-month model versus a 12-month model. So you can see the difference there. Now, the 2024 numbers are projecting that, her expenses are going to be, her revenue is going to be up, and she's going to be up in operating. So essentially giving her 6 months this year to really be able to be in a good financial position and market her business out there. So with that being said, I will ask if there's any questions. Yes, Dee. You're muted.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you.
Mhm.
Couple
You're
of
welcome.
questions. This is a Schedule C business, is that right? Sole proprietorship, owner's drawing
It is,
account?
it is a sole proprietorship, yes.
Okay. The next question is BIPOC. Is this a woman-owned business or is it? Okay, thank you. Very good. The other thing is these projected salaries. Is this something that's still projected? There's no 940 or 941 has been done. It's a startup, correct?
It's a startup, yes.
Okay. And the other, one of the other questions is about the margin. It looks like there's a 50% margin. Is that pretty accurate?
For this type of business, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you mentioned that it was 6 months worth of cash flows. Is that as far as the projections go? Is that right? 6 months or 12 months for the 200? I think it like double. 285, 288. Is it 6 months into 2024 or is it end of 12 months 2024?
End of 12 months.
Okay, all right. And the net working capital, is that capital been exhausted that she expended at 20,000, or is that capital in the bank waiting to, is that cash flow that's in reserve?
The 20,000 has been, half of it has been invested. Some of it has already been invested and some of it is available for operations, yes.
Okay, and how much experience does this person have? That's my last question in this field, in this retail.
How much experience? Essentially her entire life.
Okay, and this
business.
fixed establishment, this is not a virtual location, correct? Or
It's
online?
not.
All right, thank you so
It's a
much.
retail location. Yep.
Thank you
Thank
much.
And I think Carl had his hand up.
Yes, this is maybe more of a question for Tim and the committee. Do we have a length of time that a business must be in business to be funded by us? I thought it was a year.
Yeah, that was, I did have this conversation with John, actually. So as we all know, the cost of really anything is up right now. We are not seeing a whole lot of businesses that are able to really start with $50,000 or less. So this would be a one-off. We typically, our limit for a startup is under 50,000 or 50,000 or less. So this would be going above that limit. So that was a conversation that I did want to bring up to the committee. We are going over 15,000 or so for this project specifically, and she has not been in business yet. Business is, still in the startup phase. So I guess that would be a question to the committee. And I see a couple hands up.
Carl, this is Rachel. I had the same question on my mind and pulled up the underwriting guidelines. And you're correct in remembering that there's a 1 year in business clause, but it says for most. And startup financing is available with increased underwriting scrutiny. So I have two questions. One is around what additional scrutiny did Mountain BizWorks undertake for this financing compared to others? And then my second question is maybe not for Yasleen, but for the larger group. Have we done startup lending before? There is a clause in our underwriting guidelines that no more than 1/3 of our portfolio can be startups. So 2 questions there, or increased scrutiny and then portfolio percentage.
Yeah, we absolutely have. With most of our startups, really all of our startups, we require a business plan. We require extensive work on their financial projections. They usually work with a coach, and if not with the lender. And then we also talk about what's behind those numbers. How can you, what is the rationale behind you putting together these projections? So there's extensive market research that's done. Not only that, but we typically want the client to bring in some injection, some kind of cash, some skin in the game, essentially. As you saw, she's got $20,000 invested into this project. So for us, overall, it's a strong deal. And so those are some of the things that we've done because it is a startup. So, and there's a lot that, really goes into it. This is a project that she's been working on for over a year, and has interacted with Mountain BizWorks for about 6 months now. So she's been heavily working on, getting this project off the ground. And I'll chime in a little bit into the startup, the 1/3 startup. Most of our is that over 50, Rachel, the 1/3, or overall?
I
Overall.
don't see a financial threshold, just no more than 33% of all loans can be startups. I was checking to see if we track that on our quarterly report.
I don't believe we do, but we can certainly add that field for the next one. And I believe actually this is the first startup that we go over 50 on. So we have been not essentially tracking, but being cognizant of, the startup threshold there.
Anecdotally, I think we don't see many startup loans in this fund.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yasleen, can I ask you a couple of questions on the numbers?
Absolutely.
On the 2023, is that a projection? So the business started 5/11. Is that a projection for the remainder of 2023, or is that assuming the whole year of 2023?
No, that's starting.
Those 7 months,
so
6
about
or
6
7
months.
months.
Yeah.
So given that, it looks like the revenue is projected to basically, if you do the math, it looks like a 90% growth in revenue for over year, which feels, optimistic, I guess. So I guess that's a comment, not a question. The other question I have is, I think in the materials you said there's a part-time and a full-time retained employee. Is that compensation embedded in operational expenses?
So it is one full-time job created, and yes, it is. It is reflective of the expenses.
But is it embedded in that 32,801 operational expenses, or where's the employee staff compensation embedded in here?
It's the owner compensation.
Okay, so the part-time is in the operational expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yasleen, I wonder if you could share a little bit more on projections. I know that there's a coach involved, but given that this is a startup and sort of one of our first on this committee, how does that process work? Do we have good comparison businesses that we were able to use, things like that?
Yeah, most of the, well, really the projections, how we were able to come up with that figure. I do agree that it's a little bit, you know, it's a little extensive based on the 2023 numbers. However, the client was able to provide some really good market research. She came to the table prepared. Also matched that number to other like businesses. Now they're not in the area, so they did together with the coach, they did take those numbers from other complementary businesses to then adjust the numbers and reflect the changes in the area. So that's kind of how some of the numbers came about. Yes, Dee. You're muted. Oh, there you go.
Sorry. I just had one question. With an 805 credit score, and I surmise a lot when I see that. One thing that I look at too is the ability to secure this loan. Have you taken out a security interest in any personal guaranteed property that she may have to mitigate risk, or was that ever talked about? Because anytime you see somebody with an 805 credit score, they have assets too. I'm just, going by what my history is and my experience.
So because she is married, her husband is a owner co-signer on her personal residence. So we are not pursuing that because the husband is not a signer on our note. And that's very typical procedure through SBA, and we tend to follow SBA guidelines and requirements pretty closely. So that's not something that we're pursuing in this case.
So there is other income besides business income, is that correct? And were those tax returns purviewed or reviewed by your organization?
Absolutely. Yep. All of those tax returns were reviewed. So she does have a separate household income coming in from her spouse.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee.
Great. One question, and I just want to talk it through. I mean, the MCCF exists to, help small business owners that otherwise would not have options, right? That's the core. And so I just want to say that out loud and then question, is that true of this case? I really don't know. But seeing, the credit score and the infusion of capital, I do want to ask that question. Do we feel like this business would be able to make it, in a traditional lending environment?
So I'll chime into that. So because she is a startup, she would not have any access to any kind of traditional lending. So typically banks they want historical data. They will only typically lend to businesses that have been existing 2 years or more. Aside from that, they require a profit to be made. And they have to have assets as well, which we don't have here. So because of those, and that is, to us, that's a huge mission fit because she would not be able to get funding anywhere else. She has an 805 credit score, but that does not mean that she is not able to get any kind of business lending or business funding to get this startup going. And that is something that we, as Mountain BizWorks, look at. The business cannot be bankable. So we only lend to non-bankable businesses.
That's helpful, Yasleen. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So any additional questions? Don't want to cut this short. There were some general questions brought up related, they're not general, they're specific, related to the underwriting guidelines. And Rachel, I appreciate you sharing what you saw in those guidelines. Time in business for most small businesses, we're looking at a 12-month minimum, but that is for most, so that there is a door open to do something less than 12 months, as I would read it. There is a question here about the size of the loan. I think there's ways to read this, because there is a caveat, in the first year of this program, there's a statement there that could lead me to believe that we could go beyond that. Question for Yasleen would be, can we make this loan guarantee work, at 50,000 or below, so that there's really no question of the underwriting guidelines? Or potentially could, we minimize our loan guarantee so that we're not extending sort of the underwriting guidelines without sort of thorough discussion?
That would be as far as limiting the guarantee or going below the essentially just guaranteeing the 50. That would be a conversation that I would have for my credit team and acting executive director. The reason being is because we underwrote this deal based on the guarantee. And I think this is why we're all here we're all here as a committee to make sure that we can provide close that gap in collateral essentially with these requests. So I wouldn't say that it would deter us from being able to fund this loan because of the limited guarantee. But it would be a conversation that I needed to have. I wouldn't have to have with my team. Yes, Dee.
Thank you. And one of the things that I would say too is that we need to be able to see these loan packages in advance of these meetings. I hate to take the time up to do this, but it's important because it's over our usual threshold. The other thing is that I think this discussion should have probably happened before the meeting today, and we, of course, been in possession of all of the information. The last thing that I would say is that it sort of opens the door for more of these deals for folks who probably have, and I'm going to be very frank about it, other ways to get money. I know that when you're a sole proprietor, and I've done it before too as a Schedule C business, is everything that you've got personally, you're asked to guarantee it with personal assets. And most banks have no qualms about piercing, and you don't have a corporate veil either because you're only a Schedule C taxpayer, but they will ask for a personal guarantee to secure it with. So that's the only thing that I see is that we weren't properly prepared, and then it changes the dynamic of why we were set up in the first place, and a couple of other things. But that's all that I would have to say. Nothing against this borrower, but I just wonder if this is really what we're here for. Thank you.
Just real quick, Dee, this was sent out last week.
I'm sorry. I probably, with the emails, didn't see it or didn't get it. I was on travel. I do apologize. So thank you for correcting me.
Carl's up next.
Yes, I had the same question about advance because we had agreed that we would get these in advance. So if it was sent, I too missed it. So I apologize. Are we able, Tim or Nikki or Frank, are we able to go over that threshold? Is that also, I thought from my, and I will admit this, it's hard for me to decipher what actually we can and cannot do in the operating agreement, but in that we don't track startups, we could be at some threshold. We're assuming that we are not a third or more. So if in fact that's true, then we can make the loan. Are we able to make a guarantee above 50? Or is that a hard no?
Well, I think that's what Rachel was saying in the agreement. It says for most. So it kind of leaves the door open there.
I think to that question, Carl, I think our safest course of action, would just be to make sure that
Alrighty then.
we review this quickly with our legal team. That would, of course, result in a delay, Yasleen. But, we need to make sure that we're on target. As I read the guidelines, I think there is some
All
flexibility.
right, those are
there.
just
All good questions and the types of questions we should be asking. So, Yasleen, I think a couple of things. One, we do need to delineate the startups in the quarterly report, and that's just, I think, a pretty easy thing to add. And the guidelines do say that after 12 months, a startup is no longer considered a startup. So some of this would kind of wash out over time. But I think our safest course of action is just delaying this slightly to our next meeting. And for those that didn't receive the documents in advance, we did send them out. I'll do a better job of sort of directing you specifically to those loan documents in the future so that it's easier to see. Yasleen, any major concerns if we kind of bring this one back in September?
Well, as you know, 30 days to wait for a client is a lot. And there's a lot of moving parts here as far as signing the lease, getting the inventory ordered, among things like that. So it is time sensitive. So at this point,
The what? I'm sorry, Yasleen.
what's that?
I'm sorry. The other approach, Tim, could be to say that we're committed up to 50,000. What does that do to the loan? And can the business owner get started or fund for a certain dollar amount if we guarantee the 50? And then that gives them the ability to get going and us the ability to kind of, essentially wait another month, but not hold up the process. I know that means new loan docs and all that kind of stuff, but that's maybe another way to look at it.
Yeah, you read my mind. So that's what I was just going to say. We're going to go ahead and do the guarantee, apply the guarantee to the 50. And we can come back and talk about the guarantee for the full amount essentially next month. I'm okay with that.
I think that's nimble, responsive,
I like it.
all of the good words. Cool. So
I do think the numbers are really optimistic. So I'm a little concerned about the rosiness of these projections, but that shouldn't stop the process moving forward. That's Mountain BizWorks, projections.
Yeah, and the one way to kind of look at it was one way that we did is there's plenty of room for error as well. So
Yeah.
you're looking at
the
a
loan-
pretty
It's only 12,000 in loan essentially for a year, so there's a lot of wiggle room for the loan
Yeah.
servicing, so it should be fine.
Thank you.
great. And, to Yasleen's point, I think generally, this loan speaks to kind of why we're here, women-owned, BIPOC loan, startup, there's some good aspects here, but I think we're asking the right questions. So with all that said, for this to move forward, we would need a motion to approve the loan guarantee up to the 50K amount as suggested by John. Looks like D, are you raising a hand to motion that? Right. And then a second, but Frank's got the second. So, before we state that, I think this is a sound way to proceed. Another option would be the delay that we talk about. I don't hear anybody moving towards that, but want to state that that is an option if someone feels strongly about it. Also, before we vote, we did lose Rachel. She had a prior commitment. That does not impact our quorum, so we're able to proceed with the vote. So those are my contextual items. I'm going to proceed to a vote on the motion to approve this up to 50K. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. All right. And then, are there any opposed? All right. It seems that there are none opposed to this item, which means that the item will proceed. Yasleen, thank you for bringing this to us. Thank you for sharing documents in advance. The one caveat I would ask as we proceed, if there are tweaks like this, where we're kind of bending the rules a little bit, if we could just either talk about that or send that specific item in advance. That way everyone kind of comes with their clever hats on or whatever we want to call it. So very good.
Great. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you as always, Yasleen. All right, so this puts us back on our regular meeting agenda. So we're going to go back to the top. The first item in old business is the approval of minutes from the July 7th meeting. Everyone should have received those in advance. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from July 7th?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. This is Nikki.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Oop. Carl, are you also opposed?
No, I approve. Voted to approve.
Okay. Your hand is raised. That's why.
I got lag in my internet today. I'm so sorry.
We're going to have to get you better internet.
I know. If only.
All right. So that on our old business path, our next item was an update on new lender criteria in that work group. And Carl, we have you listed as the leader for that discussion.
Yes, thank you. I've had detailed conversations with the principals of the three primary additional lenders that we have been discussing as a group. Partner Capital, they are currently in business in Buncombe County. They are making loans. They are a mission-focused CDFI. They do provide technical assistance to the lenders that they support, and they're looking to expand. They're very interested in finding ways to partner with MCCF, and they have been in the market quite a while. Thread Capital, they are expanding into WNC. They have recently received funding from Dogwood to do that, to make more loans in Buncombe County. They have a coaching and connections support for their lenders, but really don't have the level of resources that, say, Mountain BizWorks would, for example. But again, a very good fit for us. And the third one is Abundance Capital. They are a very interesting model. They too have been seeking to move into Western North Carolina, particularly Buncombe County. They're very mission focused, and they are kind of a non-traditional CDFI. All of these are cautiously interested and optimistic. And the next step for us would be to give them a packet of what we require and who we are and how we do business. And so Frank and John and I have sort of been discussing that. I have sort of given them the indication of timing to be not a month or two, but hopefully not into next year. I don't know how realistic that is, but that was my guesstimate. And what this raised for us in doing this is, we would need to do our due diligence on them and them on us. But it it sort of lent, and I'm going to let John sort of speak to the idea of this matrix, what makes a lender work for us. And also, what is our operating agreement and our current levels of funding commitments? Are those realistic today? After sort of 3 years of hyperinflation, our operating agreement is under some review from, I guess, Nikki and Frank and others. I think it's a very good time to look at, how do we work with other lenders, i.e. not necessarily having them sign on to the original agreement, but only an addendum partner agreement, unlike the original. And should we be looking at raising our investment minimums and maximums based on the reality of the economy today? So those are all questions that I'm throwing out here. John, if you want to speak to the matrix a little bit or what we're trying to achieve, and then Frank can speak to the operating agreement. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Carl. So we are just trying to explore, I guess the question was, why aren't there more loans for us to talk about, to underwrite, which was the central premise. And so I wanted to thank Yaslin, had a great conversation with her to better understand Mountain BizWorks and kind of what they're looking for and how they structure their loans and which ones they bring to us. So it was very informative. And so I learned a lot. I've got calls set up with Carolina Small Business Works and Self Help for next week. Have the same conversation to one, for me to better understand what criteria they're looking for, and then be able to see what, why it's not working or why it's working for lenders to bring loans for us to talk about. And so hopefully we'll get more clarity around those items. And then that will dovetail into what Carl's doing with looking potential new lenders to, all in the aim of bringing more loans for us to use all this capital we have available that we're not actually deploying at this point, to make a bigger pipeline for us. So that's the central premise. Matrix was probably a little adventurous a term for it, but certainly getting clarity around what types of loans come to us versus go somewhere else.
Oh, exciting. I appreciate both of y'all and Frank digging in deep. I think as we think about new lenders, it's a valid question to ask, would a new lender necessarily solve the issue? Is the issue of not seeing more loans related to something else? And so I appreciate you bringing that up, Carl. And I think we certainly, if we're adding new lenders, we want them to be complementary, not necessarily competitive. We don't want to just poach the same loan with a new lender. That doesn't necessarily, we're looking to be additive, I would think. More loans, not the same loans, just more lenders. So all interesting questions. So Carl and John and Frank, what do y'all see? Is there something in September that we can talk about to continue this thread? Should we keep it on the agenda on a monthly basis just to see where we are, or should we let it breathe for a little bit? What's your take?
I think we should keep it on, and I think we should keep pursuing it. These are really quality lender partners that would add real value to our community if they were able to invest more heavily in startups, minority-owned, women-owned businesses, and we should encourage it. But it does get a bit to our operating agreement, as we saw today in this loan. Frank, can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I may ask for assistance from Tim and Nikki. But certainly with the new American Rescue Plan infusions of funding to the agreement, there are some adjustments that need to be made to the agreement. But if we are contemplating adding any new lenders, I would assume that would also necessitate modifications to the agreement, modifications to the agreement of some sort. And I'm not an attorney, but we at the city and the county both have some. So That's really all I've got on that topic, unless Nikki or Tim have something.
I think changes to the agreement, if I could just chime in, would be rather minor. The operating agreement is pretty clear that this committee that we're all sitting on has the ability to add new lenders. So very easy to do that. The potential change I see would be really minor in terms of some of our lenders are listed in name. And so we might have to create like take all the names out, put in an appendix,
Yes,
like these are the
yes,
approved
yes, yes.
lenders. Yeah. And that's pretty minor, not really a substantive change in my opinion, but housekeeping.
Nikki, what do you think?
I concur with what's been shared and appreciate Tim's point to our documents and just really appreciate the work that's been done. I agree. I think if we had other lenders at the table, we might see more movement. I also echo the idea that if we need to look at our thresholds, things like that, given where we are, it might make sense. So I just appreciate the work that's been done and I'm excited to keep it on so we can continue to look at it over the next couple months.
And I think from the operating agreement, if we could update that document, that's really the next step, is to share with these potential lenders our packet. Here's who we are, here's what we require, here's how we do business. And then also obtaining that information from them. And then I think we could bring it to the committee to say on a company by company basis, do we want to add them? So I think we can get pretty close to this once the operating agreement is updated. And I do think we should look at our thresholds personally.
All right. So in terms of that operating agreement item, Nikki and Frank, looking for some edits from y'all. We've proposed some on our side based on our team's legal review. The one minor change that we might want to be proactive about is creating kind of that addendum of approved lenders so that it's not embedded in the document, but sort of separate, but that's minor. So I think if we could nail those down, that'd be great. The question of different thresholds, I think, is going to create additional conversation. And I think Carl and team, we need to talk about that. And, we could try to do that in between now and the next meeting, or we could set that as an agenda item to talk about thresholds, like what we think would be an appropriate, if it's not 50, if it's not 70, what is it? That might be a good group discussion that we kind of do publicly. And so that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. Well, we plan to do that. So our September meeting, we'll have a discussion on thresholds. And if everyone could kind of bring their thoughts on stay the course, increase, whatever it is. And then we'll just talk kind of as a group and see if we can land on that. All right. Any questions for our new lender work group team? Go ahead, Dee.
Pardon me, I was just wondering if we were tracking demographics as far as the ethnic groups that are concerned. I guess we are.
We are.
I just don't remember on a regular basis how that shakes out. It may be something that those lenders are also interested in. If I were one, I'm always looking at the demographics, the ethnic and the racial demographics, and the sex demographics as well. So is that something that we could have or see by September meeting?
Yeah, it's all of those demographics are tracked on our quarterly report, which you'll see later here today.
Later today?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll review the quarterly report here in a little bit.
Oh, okay. That sounds great. Thank you. Very kind. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. All right, y'all. So we've got about 10 minutes. We got 2 items left that we're going to touch on. Frank, you're up next. I'd love to hear more, but I think it'd be really beneficial for us to review the quarterly report as well. So I'd like to spend the majority of time on that. But Frank, you're up next.
Gotcha, Tim, and I'll be quick. There was a memo sent out along with the materials last week. I'm going to put that on screen if I haven't lost it. There it is. One second. So there had been a request from this committee to provide an update and talk about what marketing is being done for the Mountain Community Capital Fund. City of Asheville staff met with county staff this past month on July 12th. And outlined in our operating agreement are some of the obligations of the city to market the fund. And certainly there's room for improvement there. We identified the compiling a list of potential borrowers, developing a list of borrower referral sources, preparing brochures, so on and so forth. It's listed here in the document. The shorthand here is the city and the county jointly are going to work together to do some marketing, promotion, and awareness. We're working on collateral materials. Tim, if you haven't gotten the request, on next Wednesday, we're actually going to be on WRES at noon. And if you would like to speak about the MCCF, we'd love to have you. But we're basically ramping up that marketing. It's, as I've said to folks, there's certainly room for improvement, and it's, one of the best kept secrets in the city. So, this question of why are we not getting more loans? If it's an issue of awareness, we certainly have a plan now to increase that awareness so the city and county are working cooperatively. Any questions?
That's great.
I'll just say quickly, I think this is great timing because I understand that there's a lot of work being done on reparations right now. Excited to hear those recommendations, but also excited to use that opportunity to really promote this program in any way that we can. Also knowing that the city's disparity study is coming to fruition in the next several weeks. Again, hoping to really sync up this timing with those two efforts. So while we may hit some media opportunities with at least the disparity study for sure, it'll be great to just take those opportunities to promote this program. So looking to connect those dots for sure.
Thanks. Thank you, Frank and team, for pulling that together. All right,
Good work.
Yasmin, you're next up on the quarterly report. Thank you.
Right. And I know we are a little tight on time, so I'll kind of try to speak quickly and answer all the questions so we will have. All right, so this report is as of 6:30 for second quarter. So new loans this quarter, 5 of them have been made. I believe we brought 2 of them to the committee for approval. The remaining were under 50. So total loan count is 48. You may see a little bit of a discrepancy between this report and the last one. We were kind of going through, there were some updates done to our CRM reporting Salesforce. And we noticed that some of them, while that update was going on, some of those loans were not being reported accurately. So I do want to point that out. So if you do go back to the quarterly report, there is a discrepancy there. But this is accurate as of 6:30. So, all right, so 48 loans total, 1.7 over the life of the fund, dollars lent. New dollars lent is 1.6. So there's a difference there between some of the refinance loans. And keep in mind, of course, some of those refinances were already within MCCF. So total guarantee used at origination, we're at 1.5. So 5 of those loans of the 48 have either one been fully paid off or have been a refinance. So that's with the, and right now we've had 2 of those that have been fully paid off, fully satisfied with no refinance. So outstanding loan balance is 1.5. So unpaid principal balance there. The guarantee outstanding is 1.2. So the guarantee amount that is available to be used is around 1.7. So it's the 1.7 is the difference between the 1.2 and the 3 million there. As you can see, the delinquent loans is still at the same 2. We have not been able to fully charge that off yet, still in the process. It's just something that's, taking a little bit of time there. We've got no charge-offs this quarter. As you can see, we've got the one success story there. And then these are the demographics, Dee, that we were talking about. So 45 of those loans have been to Black and Brown owned businesses. Do keep in mind the demographics do overlap. So 97% of the loans have been to Black and Brown owned businesses. 7 loans to Latino or Hispanic owned businesses, and 12%, which is 12%. And then 38% of those loans have been to women owned businesses. And you can see the number of jobs created and or retained, which is 144 over the overall with the 48 loans that have been made. So with that, any questions? Yes, Dee.
Thank you. Could you send a copy of that to us by email when you get an opportunity of this report?
Yes, Lena, I'll resend to the group. That way we're all.
Okay.
I didn't get it. I'm checking.
You're good.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Any questions for Yasleen? Go ahead, Nick.
I'd be curious to see how our spread represents the different sectors. So I'm curious about, I know, like, for example, the one we saw today was retail recreation. And so that would be interesting just for my own curiosity, but I'm curious if anyone else thinks that would be helpful, or perhaps if that's included in a one-time annual report. I'd love to see that alongside these numbers, if that's easy to pull.
Carl? Well, yes, we can. We do track that as well. But as far as, we can certainly add that at the annual report. Yep, we could do that for sure. Yes, Carl.
And then we're going to add to this report what is classified for our fund, a startup. So that data will then be regularly reported. Is that correct? Is that what we agreed today?
Believe so. Yeah. I don't know if there's any steps or anything that we have to take to change this document. Okay.
I think you're good, Yasleen.
Right.
Since it's in the guidelines, which we've adopted as a committee, we're good.
Great. Yep. I will get this. I'll get that added.
There's something else that probably a little bit more complicated, but I'd be curious to know, projection, maybe month over month of what is owed. So, and when loans are paid off. So you get a better sense of, like, if there's a bulge coming that's going to be paid off, or if we're accumulating more and more. So just some graphical depiction of the amount of each monthly payback it should be, because presumably there's going to be a bulge somewhere, or we're getting loans that are paid off. Just getting a sense of which ones are close to being paid off and which ones are not. And I don't know. I could probably sketch something out, but it might be a little bit more challenging to create. But
yeah, just to make sure I understand, you would want to project how much of the balance is paid off on a month to month.
Well, I just get no sense of, like, if how far behind loans are, and then what, how close we are to loans being paid off. you know, so because presumably when they're paid off, we have more capital to lend to other people. So it's like getting no sense of kind of the timing of the money being paid off essentially.
Okay.
All right, and Yasleen, you're welcome to process kind of the request today, and we can discuss further moving forward. I know.
That sounds great.
Yep. All right, we are at time, y'all. One quick comment on the quarterly report. Thank you again, Yasleen, for sharing it. I will resend to the group, but I think this is where it all comes home, which is the effectiveness of the program over time. Right under 50 loans, 5 this quarter, 97% to Black and brown businesses. I mean, that says a lot. In terms of the remaining space, I mean, I think I heard $1.7 million in potential loan guarantees that we're sitting on. So that's great. So we just keep moving forward. At this point, though, we are at time. So one, I would like to turn to Thana. Thana, do we have anyone from the public that's with us today?
There are no public comments in the
Awesome.
queue.
Thank you. So absent any public comments, we're already at time. I'm going to move to adjourn this meeting. Appreciate spending the morning with y'all. Hope you're doing well. Have a great weekend. We'll see you in September on the 1st.
Hey, Tim, can I, sorry,
Thank you.
let's hope not to lose D. I wanted to let folks know that on August the 16th, the city is hosting an MWBE outreach event at the Maplehurst Apartments Community Room. And specifically, we are trying to attract MWBEs in the construction trades because we are having some serious challenges. Number one, identifying and attracting and getting bidders on many of our projects. So this is a proactive thing that we're doing. Anyway, I'm going to drop in the chat just really quickly the link to the public input page. And if you know anybody that might be interested, please pass that along to them. So I am sharing that right now.
Frank.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, y'all.